Let's now discuss Mr. Putin's rare international trip with global affairs analyst Calvin Dark. He joins me from Washington, D.C. via Skype. Good to have you join us.
Good to be here.
So I want to get to the role that Turkey plays in all of this, but let's start with Russia and Iran. But these are both countries that have been shut out, excuse me, by the West. Do you see some sort of anti-West agenda in this summit? Is that a subtext in this summit?
Yes, I definitely think it is. And I think that where Russia and Iran find themselves are both on the bad ends of sanctions by the US and other Western powers over energy. And both of them now have their energy resources that can't be easily sold around the world. So they're both looking for buyers for their, most valuable resource. And I think it's also important to note that the timing of this is definitely no accident, happening right after Biden's trip to Saudi Arabia in the Middle East last week, because I think Putin and Iran want to show the world that the US and its allies in the region aren't the only ones that can form alliances to combat threats and open opportunities.
Mm. And this meeting is coming also just a few days after President Biden left the Middle East. The Russian president is not also visiting. It also seems like he's trying to reinforce his some sort of influence in the region as well. Do you also see that being part of the agenda here?
Yeah, because we have to think about the nuclear deal that's on the table now. As you know, Biden said last week that there is a renegotiated deal on the table for Iran to consider. I think he said something to the effect that, he wouldn't wait forever. And you have Iran allegedly supplying drones to Russia for the continued invasion of Ukraine. Now, the reason that's important is one, if Iran does end up doing that, that's going to put them further in opposition to the U.S. And I think it'll make the nuclear deal, which is already not likely, even less likely. But I also think that it shows that Russia, who was a signatory to the JCPOA, the nuke deal that former President Trump got out of, that they have influence in the region. And obviously, if they build alliances with Iran, they're going to hold some of the cards as the U.S. tries to renegotiate the deal. So I do think it's Putin's way of saying that he has influence in several areas of the world where the U.S. has interest.
And what does the Russian-Iran relations stand at the moment? We understand, and the U.S. has continued to say that there is a plan, or there are plans by Iran to supply Russia with drones in the war against Ukraine. But where does that relation stand at the moment?
Well, I think that it's important to remember that they are not exactly allies, Iran and Russia. However, they have found a common objective in combating the US's influence and those sanctions. So I think that with the drones, but also with other areas of cooperation that have been proposed, they are trying to seek an alliance to combat the US, even though I would call it more of a strategic partnership, not really an allyship, so to speak, because they also have their own past issues. But for the present, they're united around combating the United States.
Almost as we say that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Almost like it's the relations is built on that saying. But let's now turn to the trilateral summit. Let's bring in Turkey. There is a trilateral summit between Iran, Russia, and Turkey, but there is also a bilateral summit rather, between Russia and Turkey. With the trilateral relations, it's really focused on the role that three countries play in Syria, and there is now some plan to sign an Astana a peace process called the Astana Peace Process or Peace Agreement to end the 11-year war in that country. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think your characterization of the enemy of my enemy is my friend was right. But then when you throw Turkey into the mix, it gets really, really confusing because you have Turkey with its own goals in Syria against the Kurds. Iran and Russia do not want that because they're obviously pro Assad. The US doesn't even want it. And so you have this weird set of objectives from enemies. Also, as far as Syria goes, on the other side of the conflict, you've got Turkey trying to be a mediator between Russia and the Ukraine. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how Russia and Iran use those other areas of incentives, potential alliances with Turkey, to get them to not proceed with their military operations in Syria, all the while Turkey is trying to be the mediator to end the conflict in the Ukraine. It's a lot of balls juggling in the air. It'll be interesting to see how they fall.
But Turkey has been trying to provide that delicate balance and act as the mediator, like you rightly noted. But can Turkey provide what it is trying to provide, the delicate balance?
I think it's going to be difficult, but I think if of the countries that would be in a position to do it, Turkey is well situated because even though they have opposed Russia's invasion in the Ukraine, they've done so in a slightly softer way than the U.S. and other allies. And look, they're meeting with Putin. So I think that if anyone can mediate this, it'll be Turkey, but that still doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
We have our eyes on the summit, and I'm very sure you too have your eyes on that summit and how some of the conversations that will play out there. Thank you so much for talking to us, Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dack.
Thank you.